So for our town hall today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the progress that we're making on tokenomics and get some feedback from the community. But yeah, we could also just open it up at the beginning here for any questions or concerns that people have or statements that they'd like to make. Cool things that have happened in Hamza over the past 2 weeks, please just request to get on stage and we'll bring you up.
Well, it's been eventful. Never a dull moment here for us. Okay, I see your Figma. So we are wrapping up the shortest month of the year, February. I don't know if Bo's still speaking, but I don't hear him anymore. But maybe.
No, I'm not. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay.
I don't know if people want to jump in or if you just want to observe on my screen. We can do it either way. But yeah, I posted the Figma in the chat. So if anybody wants to follow along, look at what we'll be talking about, then feel free to just jump straight in there. Otherwise, I will share my screen. Okay. Yeah. All right. Can people see? Yeah.
I see.
Give me a thumbs up in the chat.
I see your screen and I'm in the Figma. Yep.
Okay. So there are a few things that are going on here. First of all, people may have seen, and actually let me just go back quickly. So people may have seen and may have access to this like large tokenomics board. This is like the work that we've been doing over, it represents an evolution of like the way we've been thinking about it over the past year. And we're currently in this zone down here. And so I shared a separate file. Again, feel free to poke around. It's sort of a different way of thinking about how we're going to launch the token and what we're going to do with it, how the different pieces fit with one another. But yeah, the basic concept that we've been playing around with is that we like this idea, and Jose heard me say this a little bit earlier, we like the idea of describing what Hamza and DCOM do as like a federated front end and a public goods back end. And the public goods back end is just sort of all the back end business logic that is necessary for a e-commerce platform to exist. And so the idea is to extract all that out, make it run on the DCOM token, so it can sustain itself based solely on this protocol token, and then it can serve all the any marketplace that wants to come along and build a, sort of a more centralized front end to interact with these sort of this trusted infrastructure. And so if you look to the right here at the DCOM protocol, it's formatted as a bit of a stack. And Jose, you may be seeing some of this is sort of what I want to dive into today is the dispute resolution and product catalog moderation. And this is going to harken back to some of the conversations that we had way back when. But the stack is basically this, right? You have your data hosting and indexing, which exists on chain in some form, can be a provider like Mass Market or maybe some other provider that is just like holding the data in a way that's accessible to every marketplace. Then you have product catalog moderation. Obviously, in order to create a accepted global product catalog, you have to have somewhere where the data is stored. But we need to talk about the process of product catalog moderation at a global level. Dispute resolution and escrow are both dependent on having a product catalog, right? So escrow payments would only be accepted or initializable for something that is within the accepted product catalog, and disputes can only be raised over, products that are in the accepted global catalog. And so I want to talk a little bit about the philosophy that we're approaching this with and some of the ideas that we're having right now. But if we zoom out a little bit, you can see there's like a lot of arrows going, this way, that way. In general, the green arrows correlate to buy pressure on the token, and the red arrows correlate to emissions or sell pressure on the token. They won't necessarily result in a sale, but they're increasing sort of the supply of the token. That creates some sell pressure in aggregate. So there's two main places where we're thinking that marketplaces will buy the token. So marketplaces are basically the main buyer of the token in this construction. They buy data hosting, right? Or they pay for data hosting as sellers go through and post the token, they need to pay in the decom token to continue to have it posted. And then they pay to create escrow transactions, right? So, at a very low level, or not the lowest level, but like at a pretty low level, a payment being sent to the escrow contract would check an oracle for the protocol fee. So let's say that we have a global protocol fee here that's set at like 5%, or let's say 1%. Then when a payment is sent to the escrow contract, it looks to the LP pairs to see what 1% of the value sent to the escrow contract would be in terms of decom token. And then each of the marketplaces have an account or like have a balance of decom token that they've given permission to the escrow account or escrow smart contract to spend from. And so it takes from that account and deposits it into the escrow contract when it's creating it. So then it splits into different orders for different sellers. That order has like a state. When the state, which is something that can be augmented by the marketplace, becomes complete, then we wait for the payment to be released. And it can be released in one of two ways. It can either be released by the buyer, in which case we give them a percentage of the decom fee, or it can be released after a grace period, what we call the global minimum grace period, just directly to the seller in the case that the buyer doesn't release the payment. And so that's the main like sort of value loop of the protocol, right? Like marketplaces need it in order to create escrow transactions. The protocol fee is extracted, and either some of it is given back to buyers if they go ahead and release the payment. And then we're not quite sure what happens otherwise with it, right? This is sort of a question that is worth coming back to, right? What should happen to the protocol? Burned, maybe, sent to judge pool, sent to buyer and seller. Don't know. But what should happen here and in what percentages is sort of a question to come back to. So that's the basics of the escrow transaction. Then we move on to like dispute resolution. So this is not actually built out all that much yet. And so, well, let me stop and just say, is that clear to everyone? Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything like that?
Jose requested.
Yeah, come on.
Okay. I have a question. So the protocol fee is in the token that we're building, right?
Yes.
And that's separate from the escrow fee?
From the platform fee, yes.
Okay, so the 5% platform fee is something else. It's what you're talking about in the little white box over there with the escrow thing on it, right?
No, so this is like, so basically like after one thing that comes in, so when an escrow payment is submitted to the escrow smart contract, at a high level, it has these parameters. And so the protocol fee is something that's set by the protocol. But the platform fee is something that is set by individual platforms, right? So I guess there's maybe another box here, but like after escrow is released, it also sends back a percentage fee that is set by the marketplace. So this allows like marketplaces to compete on like their fees, right? How much fees they're charging for the service, which is creating this graphic user interface and marketing to people and the account abstraction infrastructure and this, that, and the other thing, right? So there's a bunch of things that the marketplaces can do to differentiate themselves, and one of those is having a platform fee.
Okay, so this escrow fee is paid in USDT or whatever currency the order is settled in, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just paid into the vault, like the treasury. Like basically, it's just like the escrow contract needs to know how much it's taking out of the transaction in terms of protocol fee, and then it needs to know where it's sending it. So it just needs an address to send it afterwards. But yeah, that.
But if the seller if the buyer releases the escrow soon, the escrow fee gets returned to the buyer?
So I don't think so. We're talking about two different things, right? Like, so we're talking about the decom fee, right? which is the fee that the protocol charges.
Oh, okay.
And that's
Okay.
yeah, and that's sort of a question, right? You could argue that that's like added, like the user doesn't really even know about the protocol fee, right? The protocol fee is something that's added, and it's a cost for the marketplace rather than any individual seller or buyer, right? So marketplaces, in order to do this, have to pay in the decom token.
Okay, I see. So buyers that have good behavior, that is, they release the escrow on time, they get rewarded with decom token, right?
Yeah, ideally, yeah.
Okay, I see.
But yeah, like in what percentage, that's like still parameters we sort of have to decide on, right? How much of it is like, because we could also say like, okay, maybe it's the buyer gets like 50% of the protocol fee, which equates to like 0.5, like if it's at 1%, then it's like 0.5% of whatever they ended up buying denominated in decom token. And then what happens to the other 50%, right? Is it just burned? Is it some sort of emissions pool? Do we send it to the seller? Like, those are all things we could do, but then we don't have a natural burn mechanism. And we kind of want somewhere where burn happens.
Well, the burn mechanism would be where the seller uses the buyer uses his decom token heap and spends it on discounts with the seller. I mean, because if buyers have a lot of decom tokens, that mean they're good buyers. They release the escrow on time. So it would kind of make sense for the sellers to offer them discounts.
Yeah, that one, Bo. There's other projects that use one of the main utilities is staking the token to get discounts. But the only thought though, Jose, is that kind of overlaps with the marketplace where I don't know. My gut feeling is, do we want to interfere with the marketplace engagement? I feel like as a decom protocol. It's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if that's something that happens at the protocol level. I think that that's more something that can happen at the marketplace level. Like a platform could offer a discount they could offer a discount for having decom token, right? If they want, you could design a marketplace in such a way that you're incentivizing people to like stake their decom token, and then and then you could pay the fees out of that like stake decom token. But like, I don't know. I think that presents its own sort of risks and problems. I think that the problem is like when you say that like holding the token gives you discounts, like where does the money come from, right? Like where does the discount who's paying for the discount, right? Is it the seller or is it the marketplace?
Well, in this case, if the buyer is a good buyer, quote unquote, that means he releases the escrow on time, then the value the seller's getting is having such a good buyer. And that's what the discount would be. That's how he would be rewarded with the discount. Maybe not burning the tokens, maybe just seeding the token, that bit of token to the seller. I don't know if that makes sense. Hello?
All right, I'm here. I think Bo's muted, but I hear you.
Oh, okay.
I think one thing to be clear, Jose, and for everybody here is, as you can tell, we're talking more about decom token than Hamza token, and we're focused on that as being the public investment vehicle now. So it's a little bit different users because the user of decom is more about a marketplace such as Hamza rather than a buyer or a seller. And I remember this, like Bo says, this is stuff. If you remember, James was helping us a year ago or so, and we were having these discussions as well. So it's a little bit of a different actors. I don't know if Bo wants to go back to the actors to define the actors for decom token, because I think it's a little bit different.
Listening. I'm sorry, I had to step away for just a moment. But yeah, I mean, like, if you think about it, like, I think the sellers, like, how much is like having a buyer who releases the escrow on time worth to a seller? I guess so. What you're saying, but yeah, like then it's not like it's not a burn mechanism in that case. It's like sellers wanting to give an incentive for people to release escrow on time. And so they give a discount to people who have the decom token, but you can also just buy the decom token, right? So there's no guarantee that someone with a decom token is like a good buyer. In that case, like maybe you want to like offer accounts to good buyers, which is like a separate thing that we could track. But if we're not burning it as a result of like the fee, then it has no natural burn mechanism again, unless we're saying like, yeah, because the protocol can't really like offer discounts or pay. I mean, like I guess it could if it's like, no, but again, then like who's paying for it, right? Because then the protocol has to like mint and buy or like mint and sell the token, which is again more is inflationary rather than deflationary. So we don't want to create a system where like if you pay in decom token, then you actually get a discount because the protocol will mint and sell tokens in order to do settlement, right? Because then that's just like negative sell pressure on the decom token in general. I don't know if people are following that, but yeah. So I think the only place like this has to be like the burn has to happen somewhere here, right? We can give decom back to people, but it would be in small amounts, rather than, we would want to probably be burning more than we're emitting. Like so that's a question, I guess, is like where would we put where would discounts go? Do we want the decom token to be something that gives people discount? Because I sort of think no, because I think that the truth of that is that like platforms that do that are really like supporting their growth through token inflation. So they're saying we're just going to print a bunch of tokens in order to subsidize this discount program that we've made into the tokenomics rather than into the token rather than having like just sort of a down by sell pressure.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is we had this discussion. I remember it was like a James discussion, I feel, but we were talking about giving rewards to good performing marketplaces, not about buyers or sellers.
Yeah.
So the marketplace would have incentives to give rewards to good sellers, but we as DCOM is trying to have good behaving marketplaces and incentivizing good behavior in marketplaces.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I think that's.
Get that, Jose, or feel like that?
Yeah, well, if you define what a good behaving marketplace would be, I guess it would be the transaction volume. Higher transaction volume marketplaces should get higher amounts of token.
Yep.
Well, but this is the thing. It's like I don't. So I actually don't have that built in here, right? Markets in this construction are consumers of the token rather than like buyers of the token. I'm sorry, are buyers of the token rather than sellers of the token, right? So we're not rewarding buyers or we're not rewarding marketplaces for holding the token. They need the token in order to make use of the protocol.
So one thing I want to say, I don't know how anybody here follows the whole Blur, even the OpenSea, even Magic Eden. A lot of consumers don't like it, but they basically incentivize what I would consider wash trading because they're just looking at volume. So I think OpenSea just talked about doing an airdrop, and they're having their new V2 of their marketplace, and it seems like I think they call it farmers. I'm not sure if Bo is following this story, but basically a lot of the kind of collectors, they call them, or more low volume, higher quality buyers and sellers are complaining that these high volume farmers are just wash trading to get high volume to get higher rewards in gaming the system. So we should be careful of that, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it should be costly to game the system like that, right? And yeah, and so that's why like I like this like sort of burn mechanism, and I would be reluctant to emit to marketplaces based on like performance. Like they should be buyers of the token, but the token's value, if there is like a lot of transactions, should go up over time if there is a lot of burn, if there's a natural burn mechanism, right?
Yep, I'm on.
Okay.
On
I do think that there should be, like, there are a couple of places where emissions should happen, right? So emissions should happen to the judge pool, right? It's one of the core, like, things that the protocol needs judges. And then also, like, it should emit to product catalog moderation. And one other thing it should emit to is liquidity, right? It should emit to state liquidity. So when people hold and deposit DCOM token and create liquidity for this trading activity to happen, it should also emit to LP pools, at least for a time. Because we don't want to go the opposite direction, like, and have too much burn and have no market for the token. I mean, theoretically, it means that people would then start supplying liquidity, or at least selling into the protocol. But we don't want the fees that need to be paid by marketplaces to be so high that they can't actually finance buying more and more of the token. So we do need some emissions, and I think that the emissions most likely should be in those three places.
Well, there you go. I mean, you have a token that marketplaces buy. Mm-hmm. They have a demand for, and marketplaces in turn need judges and product catalog moderation services. Yeah. So they would have to spend their tokens on that. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And the liquidity pool would be for markets, again, to acquire said tokens, so that they can, and for judges to sell their token too. And product catalog moderation people. So you have some sort of an ecosystem there already.
Right. And then, we also have like some investors and speculators who are doing things on here, but we also need these, again, this is necessary because it feeds in the escrow, right? The escrow contract needs a liquidity pair to read how much DCOM is necessary per transaction. And so it needs to know a value of DCOM versus whatever the settlement currency is. So let's dive into, if there's no more questions or any other comments on sort of the general structure.
Seems like we're good.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about dispute resolution and what we've sort of decided here. And I'd love it if you guys have some input or some thoughts on how to do this or how to implement this or what we should do. But we basically the idea is that we create this sort of like class of judges. So people can join, and they join with like a Gitcoin passport or some proof of humanity. So you have like a Gitcoin passport, you maybe have your WorldCoin ID, you have your Twitter account, various social media accounts, and you log in, and that creates like a humanity score for you. And then that is like sort of the weight of your vote. And so if a dispute is raised, it comes into like a dispute pool, right? There's like something like this. So there's like a dispute pool. And so disputes come into here, right? And then judges can go to the dispute pool, and there's like a time period over which like this case is being decided. And anybody with a judge credential can go and vote on which way they think the dispute should be ruled. And then over time, their voting power now becomes a combination of their humanity score plus their correct voting percentage. So that's the amount of times that they've been with the majority. Yeah. So it's free. This is a good question. The question, if everybody doesn't see it, is this pre or post escrow release? And so obviously pre-escrow release, it's pretty easy because there's money sitting right there. But this question, like what happens if like the grace period has passed and the escrow has been released to the seller, what recourse is there for the buyer then? And I'm open to, I don't really have a good idea there. Does anybody have, what do we think should happen at that point?
Yeah. Jose seems to be asking a question.
The buyer could contact us to initiate a refund request procedure. Ideally, he should just be able to communicate with the seller. But if the seller's not responsive, then he gets sent to us, and we open a dispute, a post escrow release dispute.
But where would like money come from?
Well, I think the buyer should be able should have to provide some sort of a guarantee, maybe in the decom token.
Okay, so now we're talking about like seller stakes.
Yeah, well, yeah, but in this case, it's not seller stake; it's a buyer stake. If he's the one initiating the dispute. Like, for example, I ordered something, I didn't get the product I want. I'm not happy with it. I'm trying to communicate with the seller, but the seller's not responsive. So I open a dispute to sort of see if I can get my money back or any sort of customer satisfaction from the seller. But that's when I require all this dispute process judge pool thing. And I guess...
No, but what I'm saying is like there should be a period, like there's a period pre-release, right? So if the order has been marked complete and you're like, no, this order is not complete, I didn't get it, like escrow's not been released, you can open up a dispute and then it goes to the dispute pool and judges decide over it. But like, what happens if they, and if they decide in your favor, then you get the money back because it's sitting in escrow.
Right.
If you just like if it like was moved to complete and then was 7 days, 14 days, however long it is, goes by, and you don't, and then the escrow is released, and then you realize you go and check, because you just like haven't been checking, and you're like, hey, I never got this package. Like, if you open a dispute, what are how can you get your money back? Like, the seller's gone, like they're not communicating with you, right?
That's actually a good question. and that's one of the main problems with decentralized marketplaces. In person, the answer was very easy because you could still move the money back into escrow. Just had custody of the funds, but in this case you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But still, however, if the seller has some sort of a token staked as a guarantee, then you could get your money back if the judges decide on what the future of those stake tokens would be based on your dispute.
Yeah, I mean, but then we're talking about like people being able to raise disputes. Like, yeah, where does the seller stake their token, right? And what do they stake it in?
Well, ideally, it should be on the decom token, right? But the decom token does not necessarily reflect the value of the merchandise because the value is fluctuating, right?
Yeah, so that's the hard thing about like saying that the stake has to take place in the decom token is the decom token is variable, and so it doesn't. So there's no like real predictable way of saying like, oh, you have to have this much stake. Or like at least that doesn't correlate to a predictable value in terms of like, harder currencies.
But you could sort of fix it within a time frame. I mean, once the dispute is initiated and say the merchandise is $100, then at that point you would fix the amount of token to be whatever the conversion rate at that moment is. And leave it fixed.
Can this be just like another marketplace like requirement? Like, is this something where like we say in aggregate that a marketplace has to have? Okay, so this is just like the determining factor, right? Because we don't really want this to be an impediment to sellers, right?
Yeah.
But if we say that like, okay, we know that the marketplaces need to maintain a balance of decom token so that if an order is created they can pay the fee. We can say that there's a like per seller like the basically like the margin requirement for marketplaces is dependent on sellers, and it can come out of that, like.
Well, Bo, you could also make it optional. I mean, sellers that have some sort of a decom staking, they're more trustworthy sellers, and maybe that has that affects the prices that they charge for the merchandise. I mean, because I'm a worthy seller, I have higher costs.
Yeah, we have discussed that over time, just making it a transparent, showing is part of the experience. People would see how much skin in the game, or you have how much you.
Yeah.
It's not like a
I
requirement.
mean, if the buyer commits to a seller when he orders something, he has to know that what kind of reputation the seller has, if he's staking token or not, and then he decides if he wants to commit to that pickup based on those variables. The refund, the what do you say, the product return or dispute post escrow release might go differently.
Yeah, marketplace balance requirement based of let's call it uninsured sellers. I like that idea. I think that's like, and so maybe this is like an omission here, is like sellers who maintain their own stake get some like emissions, but if they just rely on the marketplace balance, then they're considered like an uninsured seller. Right, and so it has like reputation implications, but individual sellers, so like marketplace, like theirs is calculated by like how many sellers who are maintaining, is like how many sellers they have minus the number of sellers that are maintaining their own stake, and seller stakes get emission.
Right.
I like that. Yeah.
I mean, if you make all these things optional, you give people more choices, and that leads to a fair marketplace.
Yeah, that's a pretty elegant solution, right? Is like just saying that the stake can be recovered from the marketplace. If and then it's like up to marketplaces whether or not they want to allow uninsured sellers, right? Because like initially when we launched Hamza, we want to probably be the one that like is insuring all the sellers with our decom token, because we want really low barriers to entry. Right. But if instead like Hamza is a very popular marketplace that sellers want to join, then we can change the requirement, right? Like of whether or not you're like as a seller, you have to have a stake of decom token, or we maintain it for you, or some percentage, right?
That also depends on the value of the merchandise you're selling.
Yeah.
I mean, for really cheap items, you don't need that. You don't need the market. You don't need the marketplace protection. But if you want to buy high value items like maybe laptops or stuff like that, then it would be necessary.
Yeah. Okay, so that means that every marketplace needs to have an implementation.
Exactly. It depends on how the marketplace values safety, buyer safety, and those kind of things.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, cool. I like that idea. Okay, so that sort of solves that issue, or at least solves it for now. I'll have to go back to like some other people and get some feedback on. I'll have to talk to John and Hudson about how we can implement something like that. But I think that's like a pretty good solution. Otherwise, does this like, so what do we think about this like judge and dispute pool? How much should we limit people's ability to join the judge pool?
Yeah, this is something I've been thinking about maybe they can work their way up with smaller disputes. Or maybe it's about what size of dispute, because if they get a large dispute, that they should be more experienced. Maybe they can work their way up from low value disputes.
Well, and again, we think it's like it should be just sort of like anybody in the judge pool should be able to rule on almost any dispute, and then it's just like sort of an aggregate of the votes. This is also the place where we would add like AI agents to make sure that there is at least some vote during the period, right?
Yeah. So you're saying anybody could be a judge? I thought there would be some process to becoming a judge, no?
I think we should make it just like really easy and open to join. I think you should have to stake some decom token in order to do it. But again, it's like if we just allow a whole bunch of voting, but we weigh on how likely they are to be human, and then ultimately like how often they're correct, then it doesn't matter if someone spams a whole bunch of fake accounts, because it won't matter nearly as much as 5 verifiable humans who are right a lot voting on one way.
All right. So the questions is, do they need to stake? How much is emitted? And by what criteria? Voting power.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a pretty good idea. I mean, like, these are parameters. I do think they need to stake is the answer to this question. Yes. Andres, we initially had said, like, okay, people should be able to bet basically on, like, what they think the correct outcome is, sort of like a prediction market. But then when Andres and I were talking about it, he was like, one, we should not base the impact on vote stake at all. And two, when we're talking about like the sort of the logic of a prediction market, it doesn't actually make all that much sense, because the highest yield you would return for like making a correct decision was when a decision was basically like 51-49. And we don't really want to like incentivize close decisions, right? We want things to approach unanimity over time. And so, yeah, what we do with these like intermediate decisions or these like split decisions is still sort of an open question to me. Like, is there a threshold that needs to be cleared, right? Should it be that like, oh, they've cleared like 75% of the vote, that's what's sufficient to trigger an execution in one direction or the other? Oh yeah, okay. Well, if we don't have to have super clear answers right now. The last thing I want to talk about, like, if we're cool to just move on, yes?
Yeah, I think I gotta think about these, to be honest.
Yeah, give it some time, think about it a little bit. The final thing, and what I would argue is maybe the trickiest issue of all these things, is the global product catalog moderation. And the approach that we take, this is the thing that prevents us from being Silk Road, right? How do we, and there are two basic approaches. The first is, and the one that we will probably do in the beginning, is to be very permissive, right? So if there's a seller, we allow them to list items almost without question. And we make it very easy to flag, right, an item as like falling outside the bounds of something we're willing to sell on a global scale. The other approach is to have a process where items are proposed, they're sort of reviewed on the intake, and then they're accepted over time. They can go backwards, right? They can be put back into review as a result of flagging, but it makes it a lot harder to get an item into the proposed catalog. And I actually like, maybe it makes more sense to put these in the opposite orientation, because I think what is likely to happen is we will move from the first system to the second system over time. Is that initially on launch, we want things to be very permissive. And also the one thing to remember is that like at the protocol level, we want to be generally permissive, right? So the product catalog moderation, it needs to have some way of saying like, there are some social like norms that we are abiding by. We're saying that we won't sell children and guns, or, I mean, but then like guns is a question, right? Will we sell guns, right? Or will we allow guns to be sold? Because a marketplace might pop up in the United States that can sell guns, right? Intrastate, right? That can legally do it. And so should we globally take it out of the product catalog? Similarly, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I think there's a couple of bigger points to think about. One is, I mean, we talk about what kind of products, but I think a big one is called brands, copyrights, trademarks, barcodes. That's one thing. I don't know if that's how that would be integrated here. Because I think this, and the second point is, I feel like it's unverified and a verified. Like you get like a Twitter blue check or gold check. Like anybody can create a product, but for it to become verified has to be through a process, like you're saying. Like, but I'm not sure. Like if you're aware, but the Amazon catalog is based on barcodes. So to list a product in Amazon, you have to get a unique barcode because it runs a barcode system, and it says this product's already listed and it shows it. So if that's your barcode, you need to sell on that listing. And
Okay.
yeah, there's a lot to this, and I don't know how much we can get into this, but I'm kind of unloading a little bit, but 2 or 3 points there, and then there's a third point. Of course, if 10 people sell the same iPhone 16, you would have a sub SKU, like kind of like it's called a. I guess it's not really like a child, but you get you get your own subcode to identify your lot of stock in the listing,
Yeah.
if that makes
Garo,
sense.
do you happen to know how we currently handle this? I don't know if Garo is. Yeah.
Hello? Can you repeat?
Hi.
Can you repeat what you were saying for the last minute? I stepped away.
It's okay. So what we're talking about right now is like, okay. There's like two layers to this product catalog moderation problem. There's the, what do we allow from a social perspective? And then there is like product collision, right? So like two people trying to sell the same product, and like product SKUs and barcodes and like sub barcodes and everything like that. Do you know how we handle this currently? Like how uniqueness is given to like a product? Is it just like the product ID we assign it?
Well, yeah, I can tell you that SKU is unique. SKU and barcode. I think barcode is unique, but SKU would be the unique identifier. So if two vendors have the same product, they would use a different SKU. Yeah.
So we assign them an SKU. It's not like looking to like what is it, UPC codes?
I believe we haven't implemented UPC on the admin side yet, but I believe that's planned. Actually, we have that as a ticket for this sprint or next sprint. But for SKU, it would be, we currently would have them put the SKU themselves, but it's unique. Okay. So if another vendor's using that SKU, they can't use that one.
Okay.
I believe SKUs are unique to each seller and variants in products, so it's more of an internal number.
Yeah, I mean, technically, technically SKU, by the core definition of my understanding, is it's a company's provided identifier, not a global identifier.
Exactly.
I could just arbitrarily call anything on my desk a SKU for it's my system, but it's not a global system technically.
Okay.
But I mean, it's okay to have a SKU
UPC,
system.
The global number.
Yeah, UPC, but there's also EAN. I mean, there's all these different at least Amazon recognizes 2 or 3 different global barcode systems. I mean, I've even thought about doing airdrops to them because they're public databases that you could probably scrape. But anyway, go ahead, Garo.
Yeah, I was just saying what's currently, like, how the database is designed.
Thank you.
Right, that's how.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess like there's 2 layers to this. Like I said, like there would be there would be the like social aspect, and then there would be these like disputes over who had the right to sell a particular like UPC, right? Mike?
Yeah. So the UPC also connects to brand, but sometimes they don't get so specific. Brand could be separate, but basically UPC is one person that owns it and can update it.
Okay, so there's like UPC, EAN. Are there any more like global product identifiers?
There are. I could Google them, but there's a couple. Those are the 2 major ones, but there are a couple others that we can consider or not, but there are others.
Okay. So, let's just call this like global product identifier. And so, so we allow initially sellers to just push any item that they want, right? I think we don't like require uniqueness from like a seller to an item, right? So like if multiple sellers want to create different listings with the same UPC or EAN, I think that's okay, right?
Yeah, you just can't use the same exact barcode for 2 products.
So okay, so let's say like the MagSafe battery, right? Like if we list like a MagSafe battery, but there's like a Chinese knockoff version of the same product, they have different UPCs or EANs.
So it's called private. I mean, in the industry, we call it private label. So I could buy a MagSafe, but I wouldn't use their name. I'd have to private label it. So I could buy it from them. It's called OEM, and I could slap my Bose supercomputer on it, and then I could slap a sticker on it, and then I could make a new barcode and put that barcode on the box. But it wouldn't be It shouldn't be MagSafe because that's a brand and that's unique.
Okay, so how are these like, man, okay, I'm just trying to understand this now. So like, how are these global product identifiers created? Do you go to some like arbiter or like some authority who issues it for you?
Yeah, there's GS1 is the main one, gs1.org.
Okay.
That's the main. I don't know what it stands for. gs1us.org is the main one, and there's third-party resellers, and they try to say don't buy from them because they could be fake or etc.
So I'm just saying, like, okay, so like products that like are, these are assigned based on like brand ownership, not based on like the kind of product that it is.
Well, there's brands and then there's products. So they're not. It's kind of confusing to be honest, but they're not exclusive. Like you have. I can just buy a barcode. Technically, I should buy it from the same brand account, but I could put any barcode. I don't know sure if Amazon really likes that or not, but I could just put any barcode on a product and put it on a brand. It's just, but they don't want to have two. And then I go into the GS1 and I put what kind of product it is into the global database of the product, and then I put a barcode on it. And then when you scan it at a grocery store or an Amazon or anywhere, that's the global identifier that goes to GS1. So the barcodes you see all around the world when you scan, it's a global identifier, and it goes. And I as a seller, I set that. I create an account on GS1. I register my company. I buy a batch of barcodes. I put those barcodes on products. I tell GS1 what it is. I go to Amazon. I say, hey, this is my barcode. It runs it through a system. It says, okay, good. Nobody else is selling this. You can make a listing. Is that helpful?
Okay, so yeah, no, that's helpful. So like, so sellers themselves buy the barcodes, and okay, so they should be unique.
Yeah, they're globally unique.
Okay, and so if someone is selling like an unauthorized, like if someone is unauthorized to sell like a particular barcode or UPC or EAN or whatever they are, then that should raise a dispute. And then that is also sent to the dispute pool, like a separate dispute pool. But yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Let's just clean this up a little bit. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So yeah, the judges also have authority to like settle these sort of like brand disputes and to settle whether or not it is an accepted item. So like, I guess this is two separate kinds of disputes. Let's call this one brand. Let's call this one.
Bo, I was thinking, it occurs to me that we could also have sellers require, like for example, some sellers might have the website link on their store information page on Hamza, right? But if a seller, that would only go one way. But if the seller's website also has a backlink to Hamza, then that's sort of like a proof that the seller owns the brand or the product they're selling.
Well,
that,
we can go through brand. Claiming brand is completely separate than claiming product. They're both independent. So one is claiming a product, one is claiming a brand. And in Amazon, they call it brand registry. And the way you verify that is you have to have a U.S. or a globally recognized trademark. They have a certain amount of countries. And then they email the email address that's registered with that trademark a code. And if you're able to get that code from that email, that must mean you have access or ability to access that brand. And it unlocks the brand.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something we can do at the protocol level, though. Like, because the protocol is pretty slim, right? Although I guess if we're talking about product catalog moderation, then I mean, I don't.
It's a really tricky one, but to be honest, I've got experience in Handshake, and a lot of these. I know the blockchains always say we can't filter, but how do I say this? Brands very much hate when people copy their brands, and they send legal and they go nuts. I guess we could say the protocol can't be filtered, but that could be pushed to the application layer, which would be Hamza or the marketplace layer. But there's
well, but see, that's the thing is like there's this like global. What we're talking about here is like the global question, like what products like literally are allowed, and so I don't know, like it should settle these like sort of brand disputes, these like low level brand disputes of whether or not a product is indexed. But yeah, it's like the marketplaces themselves can apply their own filter, right? And say like, we're not going to list this product even though it's globally available.
The really tricky one, and I don't have an answer, is Apple. How do we know it's a real legitimate Apple? And we can't let any random person claim that they sell the Apple iPhone 16, right? That's the really tricky one. That's the really tricky one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, I think it's like that's sort of a question of like, if someone, okay, so let's take this model, right? Like someone signs up as a seller, they post an Apple iPhone 16, right? It should be pretty easy to be like, to initiate, to like flag that and say, hey, I don't think this is Apple. I don't think this should be listed on the protocol, right? And then it goes to the judge pool, and the judge pool decides. And
so
then we need.
Okay, so the judges, because actually I've been digging this even with Hamza more than ever. I've been talking to sellers and I talked to lawyers. Alex and I had a long call with a couple lawyers. They say the complaints don't come from Amazon as much as they come from brands complaining there's people infringing on their IP on Amazon and demand Amazon to take them offline. I think it's happened at Alibaba, AliExpress. Even Andres has experience with this. So how?
Well, I mean, but
that's
the thing is like, say one of these. Okay, say this dispute process has not happened yet, right? But there is a Apple iPhone 16 being offered by a seller that is on fake Amazon, right? Apple could talk to fake Amazon, and fake Amazon can easily say, "Oh, okay, well, we're going to take that listing down, right? We're not going to index that listing, right?" They choose which data they pull from the like global hosting network, right?
I understand, but what if
they can implement whatever rules they want?
But what if we let somebody slip in on a global level saying they have the iPhone 16 or they're the iPhone 16 catalog item? Well, I guess, is it connected to an owner, or multiple people can sell it, but then the way it works in Amazon is the person that owns it can update the listing, the text, the information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing, is like that would be a brand dispute, right? So that would be someone at the like who could flag it at a protocol level and say, hey, this person should not have ownership over this item. And then it would go, and we would hope that the judge pool would decide correctly.
Okay.
But like without giving like any central authority to anyone to make a determination themselves, we just have to trust that the justice process works.
Okay. No, I agree. Fair game. I know what you mean. I'm just still processing this, and honestly, I'm exhausted.
Okay. Well, it is late for you, and we a little bit over an hour, and we lost all of our non-company audience. So yeah, obviously this is a lot to download, and I've been thinking about it quite a bit. So like I have a lot of context for this conversation. But yeah, this town hall was meant to just like sort of give an update on where we are in terms of thinking about the token, typically like the buy and sell pressures of the token. And I think it makes, like, without working out the details of how these individual pieces work, which is something that we are working on, I guess I would ask, does it make sense from at a high level, do we think this is like a sort of sustainable tokenomics model?
So the marketplace is the main buyer, but we've talked about the seller also having it to stake as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But again, it's like I think I like this solution here, which is the seller stake, is optional for the sellers, but the marketplaces have to like maintain a general balance for each seller, right? And sellers can provide their own stake, in which case they get some rewards, and it makes them a little bit more trusted in the system. But yeah, we don't require, like, marketplaces can or cannot require a seller stake. What the protocol requires is that on a per seller basis, if they're operating in a marketplace, then the marketplace needs to maintain a stake for them.
And the stake is collateral against bad actors, and that.
Yeah.
And it's paid to the buyers of the bad actor if the bad actor disappears or doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would be like we would have to sell into the liquidity pool to refund the buyer. So it's a bad outcome, right, for the token and for the protocol.
And then there is governance in this, or no?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked much about governance, but yeah, I think that's what dictates these like sort of global variables. And I think that it should follow the same sort of model set up in the white paper, like we have elected roles.
Okay. Of course, I know it's kind of like the catch-all of a token, but that's also demand side. But yeah, I like the seller stake. I mean, to judge it. I'm on board with this.
Okay. Any questions or comments before we wrap up? No? Okay. Well, appreciate you guys for coming. Appreciate your input. I'm gonna build all this into a revised version of the token, of the white paper, and of the pitch deck in the coming days. So thanks to everyone for showing up. Fred, enjoy your stay in Thailand. Garo, thank you for making a brief appearance on stage and being a homie. And Anne, thank you for all the work that you do. Jose, Mike, thank you guys both for being here. I'll talk to you guys later.
Cheers. Take care.